Hello, my name is Julio Guamama. I'm a sales engineer with LiveAction based out of Palo Alto, California. And today I'll be walking you through some of the features of LiveNX solution around implementation, network discovery process. We'll also talk about the packet capture deployment options and talk about the integration between LiveNX and the packet capture appliances. All right, so LiveAction offers a solution that covers end-to-end network monitoring, and the data sources we leverage flow data that we use to track top talkers, understand applications on the network, and then we also have packet captures that we can leverage in places where you need deeper visibility, or maybe you're not getting the flow data, or maybe you're not getting the information you need from the flows. We can deploy packet captures, and again, these will give you deeper visibility. SNMP is also one of the data sources we use, and we use SNMP to discover the network devices. We use it to track QoS drops. We also use it for utilization reporting. And then we get other information from SNMP. And then the last data source that we use are the APIs, and we have APIs with Cisco DNA Center, ServiceNow, Cisco ICE, and Cisco SD-WAN. And we also offer open APIs that can be leveraged to automate some of the workflows within the solution, or also if the customer wanted to share some of the data with other tools, we have the ability to do that with the open APIs. And then the different domains we cover, we can be in a branch campus environment. So if, let's say, you just have a campus environment, you can get NetFlow and SNMP from the devices within the campus. And if we can't get the information we need from Flow, or maybe if there are devices that don't support NetFlow or some type of flow data, we can always leverage the packet capture appliances. And again, these appliances will give us deeper visibility into the network and also allow us to drill down into the packets when we need to. And then SD-WAN is also one of the domains we cover, or the traditional WAN. So if, let's say, a customer has traditional WAN today, we can still help with the monitoring of all the network traffic going over the WAN. We can do capacity planning, monitor the service provider performance. And then if, let's say, you have SD-WAN, or you're going to be deploying an SD-WAN in the future, we can help with the baselining of the deployment. So before you deploy SD-WAN, we can go in, make sure QoS is set up correctly, help with the capacity planning, baseline the application's performance before the SD-WAN deployment. And then we can also help during the deployment, basically providing visibility into the behavior of the policies, making sure that the policies are working correctly. And then in the data center, we can leverage flows and SNMP from the devices within the data center. But let's say you just have a device that's only sending sampled net flow, or maybe you're not getting, again, the level of data that you need from flows. We can always leverage the packet captures. And we've added recently Azure and AWS monitoring, and we're looking to add Google pretty soon. And basically what we can do is we can monitor all the traffic from your on-prem deployment all the way to the cloud, and then also help with getting visibility into how much traffic is being pulled from the cloud. And then we also have the ability to monitor SaaS applications. So if, let's say, you have Office 365 or Salesforce or some SaaS application, we'll be able to leverage light agents to track the path of the SaaS applications and see which device within the path is causing a problem. Is it a service provider device that's causing a problem, or is it a device within my network that's causing the issue? So this slide basically explains the data sources we use and the different domains that we cover. When it comes to the LiveNX architecture, we have an OVA, or you can also deploy it as a high-performance server appliance. And we have a distributed architecture where you can have one master collector node and then different collector nodes across the network. So if, let's say, you have a network environment with 5,000 devices or more, what you can do is you can deploy the first OVA, which is the master collector, and this is the OVA that we'll be leveraging to process the reporting. And this device has the ability to support, again, 1,000 network devices. And if, let's say, you want to cover the other 4,000, you just add collector nodes across the network. And again, even though you have multiple collectors, everything will report back to the master collector. So even though you have multiple collectors, you'll still get that single pane of glass over the entire network. And if, let's say, it's a large environment, sometimes what we do is, if, let's say, if it's a 6,000 device environment, we can use the main collector just to process the data that's being collected by the nodes. And then instead of using this for collection, we'll just, again, use it to process data. And then if we have a 6,000 device environment, we'll just deploy 6 collector nodes, and then use the master one to just, again, process the information that's being collected. And this architecture helps with the performance of the solution. When it comes to the deployment options, we have small, medium, and large, and these are the different OVAs that can be deployed. And this really depends on the flow rate. You see, we have the devices here, but if, let's say, you have an environment where maybe you have less than 100 devices, but your flow rate is 100K, you want to go with the medium deployment. So the flow rate is really what matters. And then there's also a physical deployment, which is the physical appliance. And you notice that the physical appliance has a better, or it can support higher flow rate. So these are the deployment options when it comes to LiveNX. So for the disk sizing, SNMP data is very light, and this doesn't really affect the disk utilization that much. But if, let's say, you want to reduce a little bit of disk utilization, you can also tweak some of the features that we pull from SNMP. So if, let's say, you just want to set the pulling interval to 1 minute or 5 minutes, that basically will reduce the amount of data that we're collecting from the network. You can also set it to 10 seconds or 30 seconds. If you have some technologies that you're not using, like maybe you don't have IPSLA, or maybe you don't have QoS, you can always just select the technology that you're interested in, so you reduce the overhead on the devices. So you're not trying to pull information that doesn't exist on the devices. This is basically just showing the disk sizing for SNMP, the short-term flow, and then the long-term flow. So the short-term store, or the short-term flow, is the data that we use for troubleshooting. So if, let's say, you want to go back in time and see exactly what was happening yesterday at 2 p.m. and you want to go down to the minute interval, the short-term store will allow you to do that. And just keep in mind that this is the disk, this is the store that consumes most of the hard drive space, and you notice we have 90% of the storage is being consumed by the short-term store. The long-term store is a store that we use for capacity planning, and then within the long-term store we use we average the data. So the data is basically averaged by 5 minutes, and this is used for capacity planning and just monitoring the behavior of the network. And then up here you have the SNMP, which is a very light data, so this doesn't really consume a lot of hard drive space, but we use SNMP to monitor QoS, IPSLA. We also get interface stats, things like utilization, drops, all from SNMP. All right, and then this is just to show you an example about the different stores and the disk utilization for each one. So you notice for SNMP, if you want to keep the data for about a month and you're monitoring about 100 devices, you're looking at 22 to 45 gigs. If it's if you have less than 25K flows per second, if let's say you want to keep this data for a month, you're looking at 0.75 terabytes. and the long-term store you will need about 7 gigs. And you notice that the short-term store is what consumes most of the hard drive space. This is the data retention, and this is basically where you set up your different stores. So you have the QoS store, and this is your SNMP information. And again, this is very light data. You can keep this for 30 days or 90 days or more if you need to, but this doesn't affect the disk space much. The store that really matters is the next one, which is the short-term store. And most of the customers keep this for 10-15 days, and this is again for troubleshooting. So if, let's say, I want to go back in time and see what was happening, I'll be able to use the short-term store. The alerts are very light. You can keep them for 10 days or 15 or 20 or 30 days. These alerts are very light. And the last one is the short-term store, which is again used for capacity planning or just monitoring the overall utilization of the network. Okay, so let's talk about the devices discovery. LiveNX uses SNMP to discover the network devices. So if, let's say, you have one network device or you have a range of IPs that you're interested in monitoring, you just add those to the LiveNX GUI, and then LiveNX will go out and use SNMP read-only access to discover the devices. So when you, let's say you have some devices that you're interested in monitoring, you just configure read-only a community string, and then we use that to discover the devices. And then once you go to the next tab here, which is selecting the node, let's say this is a small environment where you just have maybe 200 devices and you're just using one node, then you will be using the local server, which is the master collector. If, let's say, it's a large environment and you have 5,000 nodes, you will just click on the drop down, and then you select the node that you will be using to collect data from those devices. And then you also have, so this is the general the discovery process, where you just add the IP addresses and LiveNX will go out and find the devices for you. If you have a tool today that you're using and you want to maybe have the ability to export a CSV from that tool, what you can do, you can take that CSV from the other tool and then just import it into LiveNX. So it just makes the discovery process a lot simpler. So you're not typing the IPs in or trying to find the interfaces. We can pull all that from the CSV. Once you add your devices into the solution, they will show up on the LiveNX topology, and this is one of the devices. So this could be a router or a switch or a firewall. The big circle is the actual device, little circles are the interfaces, and the clouds that you see here, these could be other devices that we're not monitoring. So LiveNX will still tell you that there is a device connected to the interface, even though we're not monitoring it. And then when you add your other devices in, they will show up on the map. And then once you add your devices, the next thing we have to do is, if it's a Cisco environment and you want to make configuration changes to those devices, we will need to add the SSH access. And we use SSH to configure NetFlow, IPSLA. We can also push ACLs to the devices. So if you want to do that with LiveNX, then you'll just add your you select your Cisco devices, you click on the configure option, and then you add your CLI credentials, and this GUI will walk you through the different steps to get the SSH access added. And then once you add it, we have a GUI that you will be able to leverage to configure flow data on the Cisco devices. This is only supported on the Cisco devices, and if you click the standard drop down, this will actually show you all the different platforms that we support configuration for. So if, let's say, it's a 3850, there is a 3K template. If it's a 9K, there's also a 9K template. The only Cisco devices that we don't configure are the Nexus lines. So if it's a Nexus device, we don't configure it. If it's a iOS XE device, we can push configurations to it from LiveNX. And you notice on the GUI here we have traffic, which is flexible net flow. The next one, this is AVC, and then the third one is the MediaNet. So this is if you have licenses for AVC and MediaNet, you will be able to configure them, and these are very useful when troubleshooting application performance issues. So with AVC, you will be able to track application delay, network delay. With the MediaNet flow template, we'll be able to track the RTP performance. If let's say your RTP traffic is experiencing high packet loss or jitter, we'll be able to leverage MediaNet to identify any issues. And then if you have an old device that only supports traditional NetFlow, then you just select traditional NetFlow. Just keep in mind that you can't have traditional and flexible NetFlow on the same interface. So if let's say you want to do traditional on maybe one of the interfaces and flexible on another interface, you have to select different interfaces. But we usually recommend enabling flexible NetFlow because with flexible NetFlow you get better information from the flow data. Just a quick note here, if it's a device, a Cisco device that doesn't support AVC, we can always leverage the packet captures to generate AVC from the device that doesn't support it. So basically, if let's say a 3850 doesn't support AVC, you configure a span port on a 3850, you feed the data into the packet capture, and then the packet capture will take the packets, convert the packets to AVC, and then send it to the LiveNX collector. When you configure NetFlow, one of the really powerful things about LiveNX is it takes NetFlow data and then it displays it on the interfaces. So you'll be able to just look at the interfaces and see how much traffic is flowing through the interfaces, and also the type of traffic that's going through the interfaces. And if let's say you added your devices and you notice that you have a loopback interface that you're not interested in monitoring, you can always go back and remove the interface. So what I can do here, I can just right click, go to add or remove interfaces, remove the loopback interface, and then that will make my devices look a lot cleaner. Once you configure NetFlow on all your devices, you will see it on the topology map. If the devices are within the same network, we can automatically create the connectivity between the interfaces. If it's a different network, then we don't create the connectivity. So we have to do is we just go and, let's say it's an MPLS environment, we just need to go and find the WAN interfaces and then merge the WAN interfaces together and create the MPLS or INET connection. So what you need to do here is just right click on one of the clouds, and then you go to there's an option that says merge cloud, and then you select the other subnets, and then you create your MPLS connection. Okay, so that was the LiveNX device discovery process. Let's talk about the packet capture devices. So we have three different options. There is a LiveWire Edge, and this is a small device that's really designed for a small office. It can support up to 1 gig network links. And then there's also a LiveWire Core, which can go up to 10 gigs. And this is really designed for a large branch or WAN edge. And then the large device, which is the Power Core, this is really designed for the data center, and it can support up to 100 gigs. And then the way you deploy these devices, the LiveWire Edge, which is the small device, can go in line. So what it will do, it will just go between the switch and the router, and then ingest the packets, keep the packets locally, and then also generate the flow data and then send it to LiveNX. So you see that we have an enhanced IP fix, because again, these devices are exporting three different type of flows. They're exporting basic net flow information that gives you top talkers, bandwidth information, some application names depending on the port that the application uses. and then also exports AVC, which gives you deeper application information, and then also performance information when it comes to the application delay versus network delay, retransmissions. And then the third one is MediaNet, that monitors RTP performance, and you can use MediaNet to track jitter, packet loss for all your RTP traffic. And then the other deployment option is a span or tap. So if, let's say, you don't want to have this in line and you just want to configure via span, you again do the same thing, feed the data into the device via the span port, and this will keep the packets locally. And then again, export the flow data to LiveNX. Just a quick note here, even if you have inline and the device fails, it will still pass the traffic through the network. These are the two devices. So the small device supports the inline deployment. The large devices only support span or tap. And then this is the LiveWire core, and this is basically the same idea here. It connects to a span or a tap, stores the packets locally, and then also converts the packets to flow data and sends it to LiveNX. And then what you see on the right, this is the power core, which is the device that you can leverage in the data center. And let's talk about the integration between the LiveNX flow collector and the packet capture. So the integration is actually very powerful. When there is a problem, LiveNX will send you an alert, and the alert will show up on one of the dashboards. And then from the alert, you'll be able to drill down and get to the path analysis, or maybe all the different devices within the path. So if, let's say, you're looking at the dashboard and you saw there is high packet loss and you want to know which device within the path is causing a problem. So if you click on the alert, that will take you to the path analysis. It will show you all the different devices. So these circles that you see here, these are the network devices. So it could be a router, switch, a firewall, a load balancer. So basically all the different hops and the performance at each hop. And one of the powerful things is, let's say you have one of the packet captures and the traffic is hitting the packet capture. What you can do is you can go from the flow data that's been generated by the packet capture down to the packets. So instead of starting from Wireshark and trying to work your way up, LiveNX reverses that workflow. You basically start from an alert and then get to the flow data. And then if, let's say, you're looking at the flows and you really want to drill down and look at the packets, you'll be able to do that within the same interface. Thank you very much for your time today. To download your free trial or to learn more about LiveAction, please visit www.liveaction.com.